go first for me. How did the claim?
Welcome to the debate between Pam Reeser and John Loring. I'm Jan Lipcon, voter service person for the Concord-Carlisle League of Women Voters of this area. We're co-sponsoring this forum with the Acton Stowe League today, and I'm pleased to see that so many of you are here. I'd like to introduce our moderator for this afternoon. It's Dr. Sue Curtin, who's a social studies teacher at the Concord Middle School, and she will be conducting our debate. Sue?
Thank you, Jan. Good afternoon. I'm delighted to have been invited to serve as moderator for this important debate. Helping us today is Don Bracco, president of the Concord-Carlisle League, who will be the timekeeper. Jan Lipcon and Judy Barnstead, League members, will screen the questions from the audience. You'll find cards on your chairs for those questions. And before I introduce our two candidates, I'd like to say a few words about the format of today's debate. The debate will last 1 hour and is being taped for later cablecast. These microphones are for the television taping. There are no loudspeakers, so we will try to speak up so you can all hear. Each candidate will have 2½ minutes for an opening statement, and the order of these statements has been determined by a coin toss. John will go first. I will then ask the first question to John, who will have 2 minutes to answer. Pam will then have 1 minute for a rebuttal. The questions will alternate between the two candidates in this fashion until we've reached the end of my list of questions. These questions have been prepared by League members and have been grouped so that each candidate will have the opportunity for equal time on equivalent questions. If time then permits, I will ask for a number of questions which you, the audience, may submit to our two League members. Just raise your hand when you have a question that you've written out, and Jan and Judy will collect them. Finally, each candidate will have 2½ minutes for a closing statement, and Pam will make the last statement. Once we have concluded the official debate itself, there will be an opportunity for announcements from the League, so I will ask you to remain seated until we have finished those announcements. And now for our candidates. John H. Loring, the Republican candidate and the incumbent, has a BBA in Engineering and Management from Northeastern University. He has served as state representative from 1973 to 74 and from 1977 to the present. His current legislative assignments include committees on Ways and Means, Public Service, Energy, State Administration, and Ethics. As well, he has been active in the Community Chest, the Mental Health Association of Central Middlesex, Emerson Hospital, the Neshoba Valley Council, and other civic organizations. John lives in Acton. Pam Reeser, who also lives in Acton, is the Democratic candidate for state representative. Pam has a BA from Smith College in Sociology and Education and currently serves on the board of the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions, the Acton Citizens for Environmental Safety, the Acton Planning Council, the Acton Conservation Commission, the Elliott Community Mental Health Board, and 1,000 Friends of Massachusetts. Previously, Pam was a selectman in Acton for 6 years and served as executive director of the MACC. She has been active in a number of other civic organizations. Welcome to you both, and now for the debate. John, may we please have your opening statement?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming today. I hope that you can find the difference between the two candidates today. In addition to my 16 years service in the legislature and 20 years in local government, I bring 25 years of hands-on experience in the private sector in development, sales, and management positions. As my opponent says, it is time for a change. But I say not a change to more of the same, The Democratic Party, with complete control of the government for the past 2 decades, has led us to financial disaster in Massachusetts. I have fought and voted against the ever-expanding bureaucracy and the unreasonable tax and fee increases to feed this political monster. A vote for me is a vote for a more balanced government structure that will improve service to those in need, the elderly, the environment, the education of our children, the ultimate hope of our future. Debate, discussion, and compromise will never prevail unless we have a workable minority to force in-depth consideration of every issue that comes before us. 130 Democrats and 30 Republicans in the House has not worked in your best interest and never will. Yes, it is time for a change to a reasonable, compassionate, and financially sound approach to serving your needs. That has been and will continue to be the hallmark of my service. Bureaucracy is bloated. The pyramid is upside down. We have a system of 10 chiefs for every Indian, with the result that we are paying massive salaries to the directors and severely shortchanging the ability of those who deliver the services. Delivery of services over mega management must be the priority and objective of the next administration. With my election as a Republican and the addition of more like-minded Republicans in the House and the corner office, we can turn things around and make Massachusetts the great state it has been and should be. I know that many of you have already decided on your vote, but for those of you who are undecided, I hope that this forum will convince you that John Loring is your best hope for lower taxes, fiscal restraint, and efficient delivery of services to the people of Massachusetts.
Thank you, John. Pam, may we please have your opening statement?
Yes, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for giving us this opportunity. Recently, one of the most distressing things I saw and had seen in the news was the information that 41% of the people in a survey indicated that they would be leaving Massachusetts if they possibly could. I think this is a sign of the times. People are angry. People are angry at what has been going on in the last 2 years. 2 years of people sitting around and pointing at each other while the revenues were going down and down, and in a time when they needed to be working on cutting back, at a time when they needed to be working on solving problems. Instead, they're pointing at each other saying, we can't do anything, we're Republicans, or pointing at each other and saying, we can't do anything, it's the governor that's done all of this. It's time we had people in there who are willing to take the action, who are willing to get in and really make the changes that are essential. The things that John has pointed out are true. We need to cut back. We need to downsize. But you don't kill the goose that used to lay golden eggs. You work on it. You work on providing the kinds of services and cutting back on the administrative costs. And it takes time and it takes effort. What I think is the real difference in the candidates this time is who is going to put in that time, who is willing to attend the committee meetings, to work hard, to provide the changes that need to be made. We all recognize what the changes need to be, and it's going to take the kind of representation that will work at it. It's going to take an individual who will come in with fresh new ideas, someone who has gone through the experience of cutting back, as I have, as a member of the Board of Selectmen from 81 to 87, following the time that 2.5 went into effect. My league experience also brings valuable experience in analyzing services, in analyzing needs, and in looking at exactly how the government can provide those in the most effective, efficient way. It's time to get tough. It's time to get tough on waste, time to get tough on patronage, but it's also time to have people in there who are caring. People who care that the services to those who are not represented by voting, the children, people who care about the services that are provided to the elderly, people who care about what is provided for those who have mental health problems and mental retardation problems. Over the last 2 years, the cuts have been made across the board. Many cuts have been made to service levels, and we are seeing the effects of those at the local level. We need to protect our schools. We need to protect our environment. You need a candidate who's going to provide that kind of leadership, and I am that candidate. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. And now for the first question, which will be addressed to John. Remember, you have 2 minutes for your answer, and then Pam will have 1 minute for a rebuttal. What is your position on ballot question number 3, the Citizens for Limited Taxation question that would reduce the income tax rate and repeal fee increases to their 1988 levels?
I'm 100% in favor of the CLT petition. I think it's absolutely necessary for the structure and efficiency changes that have to be made in the state government. I've seen the legislature operate for 16 years. I've seen how they refuse to do the kinds of reorganization and cutbacks. The whole process in the legislature is a crisis process. Every year we do the same thing on the budget. We come up to the last 2 weeks in June to try and pass a budget for the first week in July and end up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning when everybody's half asleep and unattentive and pass a crisis budget. We've done this with budgets. We do it with tax programs. We do it with reorganization programs. The legislature must have a club over their head to be able to be forced to do the kinds of things that have to be done to put this state back on a reasonable and acceptable track.
Thank you. Pam?
I am opposed to CLT. There are areas of the state budget, 1/3 of the state budget almost, comes back to cities and towns in the form of local aid. Another third of the budget is mandated expenses that it will take some time to either change the legislation or you will have to continue to provide that expenditure. So there's a very narrow area of the budget that will receive the entire brunt of this. It will happen in only 1/2 of the year because it goes into effect January 1st, so that it's going to have major impacts on human services, and if it comes out of local aid, it will have a major impact on our local communities. I think that we have better ways of making change. I think that the legislature has heard the message that this is not a situation of sending a message. This is a question of saving an already failing system. We already have had cuts in revenues to a major proportion, and now if we further cut it through CLT, you will see this happening. You will see the effect at the local level. You will begin to feel enormous loss of services, and I think it will be disastrous and cause chaos at the state level. You don't need that kind of chaos to provide change, and I am willing to work at the change instead of relying on something such as CLT to provoke it.
Thank you, Pam. The next question is for you. If question number 3 does pass, how would you cut $1.2 billion from the budget in the middle of this fiscal year and another $2.3 billion next year? Where specifically would you cut?
I certainly would work hard to have this put off for 6 months. Putting it off doesn't solve the problem, but I'm basically opposed to the whole CLT approach. But I think unless we have the time to make some changes in legislation so that, as I said, some of those mandated expenses can be cut back, the cuts are going to have to be made in local aid and in the human service area primarily. And I think that that would be just disastrous for our communities. So my first approach would be to buy us some time by putting it off for 6 months, implementation. That also would enable local communities to plan on what they're going to have then as their local aid monies, because I think we'll need time at the local level too to plan on how to deal with a cutback in state aid. And then I think we have to begin to look immediately at where we can cut back in terms of the management and bureaucratic costs. There are areas such as, we know the police forces, there's the registry police, the MDC police, the state police, those can be combined. There are areas such as mental health and mental retardation that were separate agencies as of 3 years ago that we may have to combine again to cut back on agency costs. There are similar situations in the environmental protection area. Each little aspect of environmental protection has its own agency. You have an agency for every problem in the environment almost. We have to combine some of those to cut back on our bureaucratic costs, but that takes time. That kind of cuts can be made and can be made more systematically if we do not have CLT. If we have CLT, we're going to have to do it very quickly, but we'll need at least that 6 months time period.
Thank you. John?
Well, I certainly hope it does pass, and if it does pass, I agree that one of the first things, and incidentally, it won't be the new legislature that postpones implementation of CLT. It will have to be the sitting legislature that's presently in session. I'm in favor of postponing implementation until the 1st of July, and that will give us the opportunity in the legislature between January and July to put into the budget that we will be working on the implementation of a lot of the cutbacks that, or the efficiencies and changes that will have to be made in the governmental structure to put it back together. There's no way, I think, that the CLT can operate on December 6th when it will in effect be the law of the state. It will be our responsibility between November 6th and the first 6th of December to change put the extension on the implementation date, and that would be the first thing I would do.
Thank you, John. The next question, I'll start with you. What areas would you fight to protect from cuts if CLT passes?
I think that what we have to think about is the major responsibilities of the government to the people of the Commonwealth. Human services, education, public safety. I think these three are probably the top three priorities. And fourth, the environment. But all these four areas have to be preserved. I think that we can make some specific savings in the areas of like $77 million for an art museum in North Adams. Doesn't mean that I think we shouldn't have an art museum in North Adams. I think we have to prioritize. We have to put things on a different schedule. Perhaps somewhere down the road when we've come back and we've built a surplus because of the result of CLT, we will be able to do some of those nice things like a museum in North Adams. It's just there's just so many things we can do that that's the answer.
Thank you, John. Pam?
The museum in North Adams doesn't come out of the budget, and it's a separately bonded issue, and that's not an area that we can cut. I have spoken about the areas that I think we can look at in terms of management. That takes time. To buy that time, as John said, it's going to require passage with this sitting legislature. The likelihood of even getting that kind of decision out of this sitting legislature is very limited. I think it's a mistake to pass something that is so flawed that you're dependent on what I would call a lame duck legislature to pass it. And I really urge you to defeat that and make every effort to defeat it. What areas would I protect? I certainly would choose the same areas John has, but it's interesting to me that John has listed all these areas. There's no way you can protect all of those if you pass CLT because of the major impact it's going to have. There's no way you can protect all of your local aid to cities and towns and your human services and your environmental services. You're going to have to get in there and really do the work, and it's going to take time. And the impact of CLT is going to be too soon to make those changes, and I think it's going to be disastrous.
Thank you, Pam. We'll start the next question with you. The phrase restructuring state government has been a frequently used term in this year's campaign. How would you define restructuring, and how would you implement it?
I've spoken a little bit about that. I think that we have, because of having the money basically, we have developed a lot of separate divisions, a lot of separate agencies that can be combined. This is part of the restructuring, and part of it has to be done by the executive office probably. But I think that we as a legislature have to set accountability standards in everything that we pass in the future. We've got to require that they report back to us. We've got to require that it be done with a minimal administrative buildup. We've got to require that the present structure be changed. In other words, that our governor go back in and analyze the way the agencies are set up. It will probably require someone coming in from outside, and this has been suggested by a number of legislators, that we bring in someone like Arthur D. Little to really look at the system, to really analyze the delivery of services, because somebody from outside the legislature is not going to make that kind of decision because they don't really understand what's involved in terms of the technology. You can rely on the agency heads doing it, but we've been doing that for years and it hasn't happened. It's going to require an outside look at this inside system so that we figure out exactly where we can combine and cut back. We have relied on the governor doing it in the past, and it's really very impossible for a governor to take that kind of step when you have agencies with such highly technical information as in the environmental area. I think that we can set the standards, we can set the criteria, and we can demand before the next budget goes into effect that the cutbacks be made.
Thank you, Pam. John?
I think that the restructuring can take place in particular from the governor's office. The governor, after all, appoints the secretaries of the cabinets and all of the practically all of the commissioners of the various agencies, and these are the management people that build the bureaucracy that have put us in the position we're in now. I think it's absolutely imperative that we elect this time a Republican governor just to get rid of the superstructure of appointees that have been there and have built into the system so deep that there's no way that they will get out except by changing to a Republican administration.
Thank you, John. We'll start the next question with you. What is your position on reproductive choice?
If you don't mind, I would like to read my statement on reproductive choice because it is such a difficult area for all of us. And I might surprise you. I'm pro-life and I'm pro-choice. The tendency of the two extremes on this issue seems to be if you're not 100% pro-choice or you're not 100% pro-life, I will not vote for you. I believe that I fall into the great gray area that recognizes that abortion as a medical procedure is indicated in many situations, particularly in the first trimester, that abortions can be allowed under more severe circumstances in the second trimester, and that only under extreme circumstances should abortions be performed in the third trimester. Roe versus Wade basically says this and is the law of the land. Only the Supreme Court can change that, and I don't anticipate that happening in the foreseeable future, regardless of the makeup of the Supreme Court. The legislature, under the most recent Supreme Court decision, can tinker with the constitutional interpretation, but for the most part, we can only act within the parameters of Roe versus Wade.
Thank you, John. Pam?
Yes, certainly my position is very similar. I am pro-choice, however. I do not feel that the legislature, that the politicians should be making this decision. Certainly, as John points out, in the first trimester, it's a medical procedure, and second trimester, a little, more serious situation, and third trimester should be very carefully weighed. And I think this is the approach that women are taking. And I think it's important that we leave that to the woman and her doctor and her family and the people that she chooses to consult with to make this decision. It's a major decision for any woman. It's not one that ever should be taken lightly. Certainly our young women need a lot of counseling before they make this type of decision, and I think that counseling should be made available. I think that we need to think more about how this decision is made and not about who makes the decision. In other words, I do not think the legislative process should be involved.
Thank you, Pam. We'll start with you on the next question. what is your position on state funding for abortion?
I believe there should be state funding for abortion. If there's not, then it's only left to women who can afford it. It's only an option for those who can afford it, not an option for others. I believe that this, in order for it to be the choice of the woman, should be part of the funding that's available.
Thank you. John?
I'm also in favor of state funding of abortions for exactly the same reasons as Pam is. I think that if abortion is the law of the land, as it is allowed, I think that poor people and young people and people disadvantaged should have the same opportunity as everybody else has to have an abortion. By the same token, and the question may be asked on the other side of the question, I voted also in favor of parental consent, or in the absence of available parents for judicial consent for abortions for minors.
Thank you, John. We'll start the next question with you. Many proposals have been suggested for increasing state revenues. What is your position on broadening the sales tax base, increasing the excise tax on cigarettes and liquor, increasing the gasoline tax, and a graduated income tax?
As you know, and as most of you know, I'm opposed to any tax increases. I have on all my signs, no new taxes. I might point out that I had those signs printed about 2 days before George Bush changed his mind about no new taxes. And I got to be a little bit of a problem. But I have a record of not voting for new taxes. I'm opposed to graduated income tax. Cigarettes and alcohol are sin taxes. I don't have quite as much problem with, but that does tend to hit the lower income people. What was the other tax that you mentioned?
Increasing the gasoline tax, the sales tax.
The sales tax on services. I don't think we should increase any taxes. I think what we have to do is to develop a different kind of confidence in the economy of Massachusetts, and taxes will naturally rise with a rising economy. We'll come out of our problem if we have an attitude that says Massachusetts is a good place to do business and Massachusetts is a good place to come to, not Massachusetts is a place we better get out of. So the question of increasing taxes is just, to me, not an option. We've already increased them billions of dollars in the last 3 years. I don't think we should even consider raising taxes in any form.
Thank you, John. Pam?
Well, I think it's interesting that John is still saying no new taxes. Even President Bush has abandoned that stand. What exactly would he cut? He never says. John votes for new programs. For instance, John, you voted for the greenhouse bill, which did include a tax. And I think that he has to make the decision. He votes for lots of new programs without voting for the support for it. I think it's time that we heard from him where he would make the cuts every time he votes for one of these new programs, as I will do in the future. I do not think we need new taxes right at this point. I would like to certainly make every effort to see us make the cuts that are essential and the cuts that we've been talking about in terms of restructuring prior to making any decision for new taxes. But I also do not think that what's happened over the last 2 years was wise. Over the last 2 years, by saying no new taxes, they've cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest because our bond rating has gone down and down. And I think to drag their feet at a time when we needed the tax to cover the expenditures that were there and to not even make the effort to cut the costs overall was very unresponsible on the behalf of our legislature.
Thank you, Pam. The next question I'll address to you first. Do you have any other innovative ways to increase revenues? And what action are you prepared to take now?
Well, I think we've got to look back at some of those taxes again. I think that we've got the vote to increase gasoline tax was something that we need. That's a tax that's an incentive also to cut back on use of fuels. I think there are others that we can look at very carefully that are positive forms of taxation. I think the sin tax is another potential one, and I know that John has voted against the cigarette tax, increase in cigarette tax in the past. I think we need to look carefully at each one of these as individuals, and I think the graduate income tax has potential. It's something that we've put off for many years, and what might be better is to actually key our tax to the federal income tax so that we have a very simplified, straightforward process of determining the taxes that we each pay.
Thank you, Pam. John?
Well, I think I've already answered the question to the extent, the question was, do I have any innovative programs or ideas for raising more money? I think the way we raise more money is to, as I said earlier, build some confidence in this state, build some confidence in the business and industry of this state so that we have a rising economy, and that's the innovation that's needed to make for more income under existing tax programs. We have plenty of taxes now, and the taxes aren't going to, the volume of taxes except for CLT is not going to change very much, but it can go up considerably with a rising economy.
Thank you, John. I'll address the next question to you first. What are your priorities for action and funding in the area of the environment?
Well, I think one thing that was just mentioned is a very active priority of mine is the greenhouse bill. That's, as a matter of fact, we have an executive session on Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock in the State House to report that bill out of Ways and Means to protect the ozone layer. And the tax that's included in that, which Pam mentioned, that I opposed that in committee, however, I didn't prevail. And this is one of the interesting things about the legislative process. Sometimes you have to make compromises for the better of the whole bill. I could have dissented on the bill, and imagine what Pam would be saying about me now if I dissented on the greenhouse bill in the Committee on Energy. But I didn't dissent because of the tax on gas guzzlers, and that's what the tax is in the bill. I didn't dissent because I know that overall the bill is a good bill, and I hope that we will report it out of the Committee on Ways and Means. I hope that I can convince Ways and Means on Tuesday to perhaps revise it to either eliminate or recalculate or redefine the gas guzzler system that's in the bill and eliminate that tax increase.
Thank you, John. Pam?
Yes, I think we have a great deal left to do in terms of environmental issues. We have more to do in terms of protecting our surface water supplies, our reservoirs, the amount of building that's allowed right up to the edge of the reservoir. We have a lot to do in terms of protecting aquifers, because there, too, people can build various structures on them throughout the state without any limitations. Each community is left to do the zoning themselves, and when they rezone, the previous zoning is protected for a period of time in spite of the fact that it may be for water protection that the changes are suggested. My endorsement by Clean Water Project and by the Mass League of Environmental Voters is based on my qualifications, my experience, and my commitment to environmental issues. And in terms of my service into the local community on Groundwater Protection Coordinating Committee, the Conservation Commission, and the Planning Council have given me a good understanding of what the problems are and what needs to be changed at the state level in terms of zoning and protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. I'll address the next question to you first. What would you do to improve the quality of public higher education and to ensure that all qualified individuals have equal access to it?
There are a number of states that have done very creative things in terms of